We have reached the 4th entry in my James Bond series of reviews leading up to No Time to Die, where I'm reviewing every official James Bond movie leading up to that movie in April. We have also reached the 4th movie in the official James Bond series, and that is Thunderball.
Like Thunderball.
Thunderball once again stars Sean Connery as the iconic James Bond, and in this one, Bond is sent on a mission to find 2 NATO atomic bombs stolen by the criminal and terrorist organization Spectre, which holds the world ransom for £100 million in diamonds, in exchange for not destroying, and search leads Bond to the Bahamas, where he has to go up against Spectre's #2 agent, Emilio Largo. Bond is aided in his investigation into the theft of these atomic bombs by his friend and CIA agent Felix Leiter, as well as Largo's mistress, Domino, played by Claudine Auger, who unfortunately recently just passed away. There was a huge dispute when this movie came out. This was actually supposed to be the first Bond movie ever released. We were supposed to receive this movie before Dr. No, but there were a lot of legal issues, a lot of in-house battles. Apparently, there was a man named Kevin McClory who he basically said Ian Fleming had stolen his idea from a screenplay that he had written, and so Ian Fleming used that idea and published the Thunderball book because their screenplay was being used as a basis for a failed adaptation of a Bond movie. Because of that, Albert R. Broccoli and Harry Saltzman were at the time the producers of these movies. That has since gone on to Albert R. Broccoli's daughter, Barbara Broccoli, and his cousin, Michael G. Wilson. Albert R. Broccoli and Harry Saltzman, who produced the series back in the day, ended up becoming executive producers on this project, whereas Kevin McClory became an actual producer. And this led to a huge legal dispute that went into the 80s and didn't allow the producers, or EOM Productions, the production company that Harry Saltzman and Albert R. Broccoli started to produce the Bond movies, it didn't allow them to use any characters of Spectre. It didn't allow them to use the Spectre name, the Spectre trademark. Everything was trademarked under Kevin McClory's estate. And so once he passed away, those rights finally reverted back to EON, and they bought the rights from his estate. Something like that. Long battle. That's why when I talk about For Your Eyes Only, I'll be talking about a certain aspect of that movie and why we haven't seen Spectre on screen until 2015's Spectre. But now let's get on with Thunderball. Thunderball for me it's a good movie. I don't think this is a great film. By no means matches the quality of filmmaking from Dr. No, From Russia with Love, and Goldfinger. This is directed by Terrence Young, who actually directed Dr. No and From Russia with Love, and I haven't really spoken too much about the directing in the series. I'm going to talk about it a little bit with Thunderball, because Thunderball has a lot of aquatic action sequences that take place underwater, and with those, the direction for this movie is pretty spot on. I think that this movie is very well directed for its time and for what the producers in the screenplay were asking for. I think that at the time they captured those sequences very well on screen, and Terrence Young, being a veteran of the Bond franchise, knew exactly what he was getting into. So it may have been a bit of a challenge to film those scenes underwater. I will say, it looks clean, everything's in focus, and you gotta give them credit, because I would assume that was probably in a giant water tank. There's no way they filmed at the bottom of the ocean. Come on, give me a break. So the fact that they could actually capture what they wanted to capture within the constraints that they had at the time, you gotta give the filmmakers props. And the action scenes underwater are in focus, they're clear, you can tell what's going on. Very well directed. I'll get more into those action sequences in a couple of minutes. Sean Connery in this movie as well is still really good as James Bond. I don't think he is as good in this as he was in Goldfinger, but he proves why he still has the charm and he still has physicality to play James Bond. There's also a part of me that has always loved the plot of Thunderball, because I feel like with the first 3 Bond movies, while they were these elaborate take-over-the-world type of plots, they also weren't as elaborate as the plot of Thunderball, where there's so many moving parts within this plot. I mean, you could hear what was going on when I was describing the plot for you. There are a lot of moving parts in here, and I think the movie does a very good job at weaving those things together, weaving in and out of those various plot threads. It's a very elaborate, very complicated plot. Again, another plot that you have to pay a good amount of attention to understand what's going on, and this story just brings us a really interesting villain, Emilio Largo. I really liked Domino in this movie. She's resourceful. I like how she ends up becoming Bond's ally, even though she is Emilio Largo's mistress. That part is great. I really like how Bond has to really peel back the layers and get into the main Bond girl's mind to try and get her to be an ally for Bond. I think that is a really strong aspect of this movie as well. Something that hasn't happened up to this point in the series. We're 4 movies deep. Of course Bond has gotten hurt, of course he's gotten injured, but we've never seen Bond get shot in the line of duty. He is going through a parade and the Spectre agents shoot at him and they injure him in the leg, and it's interesting to see Bond get shot this early on in the series. You see him later on in the series, like Skyfall, Quantum of Solace, Casino Royale. We see him get the shit kicked out of him. He gets shot in Skyfall and is presumed dead. So it's really interesting early on in the series to see Bond get injured and get a wound like that in the line of duty. I have quite a few issues though with Thunderball. While it is a fun movie, these action sequences that take place underwater, they are a bit too long, and that pushes this movie's runtime to over 2 hours. The previous Bond films were no longer than an hour and 50. I think From Russia with Love was like an hour and 55, but both Dr. No and Goldfinger were an hour and 50. This is 2 hours and 10 minutes. Those aquatic action sequences really push that runtime. It feels like these sequences last forever, and it feels like when you're watching these, you don't know who's fighting who. It's not because everything is out of focus. It's not because these action scenes look kind of cheap and dirty and all that. It's just because everybody's got almost the same costumes on. So it's like trying to decipher as to who's on whose side is very hard after a while. And I feel like that's kind of a big reason why these action sequences that take place underwater feel a bit elongated. This movie also doesn't hold up all that much anymore. I mean, obviously, it's 1965. This was 55 years ago. When things in the previous 3 movies hold up more than a movie that is slightly newer in the series, yet still older, that's a bit of a problem. And this is especially evident when Bond is fighting Emilio Largo on his boat at the end, and it's just got that music. And you see where the boat is going, and the effects just, they look bad. I get it. It was the time. It was 1965. I understand that, but just watching it now is just like, oh man. There are sequences where it looks like they're about to hit a rock, and then it just goes to this head-on shot of showing the ocean and the boat swaying back and forth, and it doesn't even look like it's gonna hit those rocks anymore. It's crazy how when they're inside the boat filming, it looks like it's gonna hit the rocks, but then it feels like the filmmaking is so careless when it shows a point of view from the boat and you see the camera swaying back and forth when it's on the ocean, and it looks like it's not even gonna hit those rocks anymore. It's really, really frustrating in that regard, and that's why it doesn't really hold up all that much anymore. And again, this movie is a bit long. This is 130 minutes. That is really long for a Bond film at the time. Just wait until we get to On Her Majesty's Secret Service, though. That's even longer. There are sequences in this film that feel long. Those aquatic action sequences There are scenes in the middle of this movie that feel a bit elongated. I always felt that the portion of the movie where Bond's at like that weird spa, it's basically right after the opening credits. I always felt that that portion of the movie was long. I feel like it took a really long time. It's that portion of the movie where Bond's in the machine and somebody actually tries to kill him. The movie just, I feel like this movie just takes its time to get going. And it just feels a lot longer because of that, and because those aquatic action scenes feel long and drawn out. I definitely do recommend checking out Thunderball, but the quality of Thunderball just doesn't match up to the previous 3 films in the series to this point. I'm gonna give Thunderball a B-. Seems a bit low, but I think I'm being fair when I say that it feels a bit elongated. You can't really tell who's who underwater, and the movie is just a bit too long. It takes its time to get going. But everything else about the movie, I think, is very well done, especially for its time, even though it doesn't really hold up all that much. Guys, thank you for sticking with me for these James Bond reviews. I'm having a blast talking about my favorite film franchise of all time. Stay tuned very soon. Have you guys seen Thunderball? I want some feedback. Drop me a comment in the comment section below. You guys are the best. I will leave my link to my website. There you can find my links to my social media accounts as well. You guys are the best. Thank you for watching. My name is Alex Madden, and I'll see you at the movies somewhere.